All right, so let's take a look at polishing up our game a little bit here. So let's take a look at our really just polishing our ladder, climbing ladder. Now, if I click here, you can see I kind of want my gravity to be a little bit heavier, right? And I also want my gravity to be at 0 at times. And let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. So if I have my player selected here and I look at my gravity, let's see, where's that at? Gravity scale. I'd like him to be maybe 1.5 so that when I'm jumping, he falls down quicker, right? And so this is going to be a nice fine tuning between that and then my jump speed could maybe be 10 or something for testing purposes, but I want him to fall quickly. The problem is when I get on my ladder, do you see how he sinks? Well, when I'm on the ladder, I want my gravity scale to be 0 so he doesn't sink and I could just walk up and down and it feels more natural. So I'm going to change it to 1.5 now. And then inside of my code, I'll change my jump speed to 10. And again, this is part of the game design aspect is you're always kind of balancing everything. So I hit Control S and save that really quick. And I also want to kind of play a climbing animation. I don't really have a climbing animation. So I might just do, when he's on the ladder, it just plays like the idle animation or something, or an accelerated idle animation. And I'll call that climb. So that's a lot going on there. So let's go ahead and take care of that. All right, so the first one we're going to do is we want a variable, which we're going to call, and this is really just going to be a float variable. And this represents the gravity when moving. And then that's going to be like our 1.5 value or whatever we want. And then we need another variable that's going to represent gravity on ladder. Now you might be like, well, why don't I just set this to 1.5 now? Well, the reason for that is because we already have an exposed variable that gives us gravity scale on our player. And that's this right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to access this RB2D, this rigid body 2D. And inside of start, I'm going to just do gravity when moving equals RB2D dot gravity scale. And so this is always going to just be equal to the gravity scale, right? So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So this is currently storing that 1.5 at the very start of our project, or at the start of our game rather. All right, so when are we essentially checking when our character is not on the ladder? Well, that's actually in the climb ladder method, right? So remember here, we're saying if our capsule collider is not touching, we're going to return, right? So this is a good place to just say rigid body 2D dot gravity scale equals the gravity when moving. So this is where we're setting it. We're making sure that, okay, if we're not touching the ladder, that means, because remember this is called every frame. If we're not touching this ladder, we're always going to set this back and then we're going to return. We're going to set it back to 1.5. So if that's not the case and we are climbing our ladder, right? We are touching this climbing ladder layer. All we have to do is grab this and then just set this to 0, right? So I'm going to set this under climb velocity. Let's kind of move this up a little bit. So we just say gravity equals 0. And now when I save this, let's go ahead and test our game. So here we are moving left, jumping down. Got great 1.5 gravity here. I climb on this ladder. I'm just sitting on the top. I can move up and down. And if I look at my, I don't know if it does update in real time. You can see gravity scale set to 0. When I step off of that, it's 1.5. Cool. Let's take a look at creating our climbing animation, which I guess we did create a climbing animation here. So let's set that up really quick while we can, so that when we're climbing up the ladder, it actually goes here. So we have an is climbing here method. I forgot that I created this. So I'm going to just highlight that and copy that. And if we look at this, let's see. We don't have a separate script that handles all the animation stuff. We're sort of doing it all inside of here. And when we go to refactor this or we use the solid principles, which I'm going to make a whole series on just for class, on one of the later classes on the solid responsibility theory. Right now, I just want you guys to get comfortable enough with programming that later when we get into, because the way I write things, I try to write code that functions, and then later I go in and refactor and clean up and all that stuff. Because for me, it's sort of hard to write the most perfect code at first. I really want to get something fast for my my tech lead to just see it. All right, so let's go in here and let's say, okay, At the very bottom here, underneath our gravity scale, all I have to do is say animator.setBoolean, because remember this is a Boolean value, and I'm just going to turn on isClimbing. So if we are, did that not work? And then I want to set this to true. Sorry, I forgot that there's a separate parameter there. And then what I want to do, let's test this, because what's going to happen, I believe, is inside of our return here, we might have to set this to isFalse if we're not climbing. So if I press play here, and I'm going to dock my animator off to the side here, and I'm just going to pull these way over. So I walk, I'm in my walking animation, I jump, I'm back to idle as I jump, and as I'm on the ladder here, you can see I'm doing my climbing animation like this. If I fall off, you see I keep climbing. So what I can do is I can just grab this and say, hey, I have this functionality here that's always checking if I'm not touching that climbing layer, I can return out of this. So what I can do here is just set this to false here. And, because again, if I'm not touching that climbing layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my gravity back to 1.5, and I'm going to turn off the animation and set it to false, which if we look here in our parameters, if isClimbing is false, it returns to the other state, which is idle. So let's go ahead and check that. So here I am. Let's make sure that isClimbing. And then if I get off the ladder, you can see it turns both off. I'm just idling right now. Go up this ladder here. Cool. And our world is ended, and we can kind of jump off and fall forever. We'll figure that out too. Like your character will have like an invisible box or something that goes to the length of your thing, or we could set it by height, and then it just resets the level. So let's save that. Let's make sure that we check all this good stuff into version control. And let's take another look at where we can really polish this and improve it. So if I'm touching my ladder here, right? You can see my idle state is my character is looking up and down, right? But if I just get to the top of this ladder, notice he does this like spazzing thing where he's in the climbing state. I don't want that unless I'm up or down. I don't want him constantly spazzing. We actually have logic that's already in there that we just need to modify that checks if we have any sort of movement, right? Like, so if we scroll up to, let's see, our Boolean here, it says player has horizontal speed, right? And what this does is if it has this, remember that we used this before. So this Boolean is a true and false variable. And all this is checking is, do we have any sort of value entered in the x-axis, right, on our rigid body? And is it greater than 0? So if I copy all of this, and if it does, it returns a true or false. And I just scroll all the way down to where we are turning this on and off for climbing the ladder, right? So here it's turning false. What I can do here is I could just say, hey, I'm going to change this to has vertical speed, or we can call it movement. And I'm just going to paste this inside of here. And what I'm going to check is if there's anything on the y-axis here. That's it. So if we have anything on the y-axis here, and it has this speed, instead of setting our Boolean to true or false here, it's just going to set that based on if we have any vertical speed. So let's go press play. And I'm going to go here, jump, and I'm on the ladder. You can see I'm stuck on idling. If I'm on the ladder here, I'm on idle. So now it looks like he's climbing and I'm idling. So it's just kind of nice little polish there. Makes it look a lot cleaner. He climbs when I'm climbing, and then he idles when he's idling. Save that. Again, check it all in. All right, I think that's it for now. And yeah, we'll work on a little bit more on functioning our cameras and some other physics material stuff to make the ice or different areas react differently as our player moves. We're just wrap this up soon. We got just cool stuff.